So today, Bill Barr finally testified in front of the House, and we got a chance to see some of our representatives go after him. So here's the thing. Bill Barr is smart, right? I don't like what he does. I don't agree with him. I think he's one of the most dangerous people in the country. He is horrible for our democracy. He may be amongst the worst people in our history, right? If you were making a top 10, he may be in that group of worst people for our government in its history. Right. So here he is in front of Congress, and he's smart. He's a smart guy. So he's obviously thought this stuff out. He's obviously prepared. And it's one of those situations where unless you pay real close attention, a lot of people are going to hear his explanations and go, yeah, okay, I guess that's a reasonable argument, and move on. But not in this case, right? So Representative Jayapal calls him out and basically puts the perfect description on exactly what is going on here and the imbalance that's being caused by our country, not treating everyone the same, but picking and choosing when to take certain actions, which we'll talk about after we watch the video. The justifications here, when you really look at them, fall thin. They sound somewhat reasonable if you're not paying attention when he says them, but if you stop and think, you go, oh, actually, that's not even consistent with its own statement. It's not self-consistent, right? It falls apart when you think about it. So let's take a look at what went down.
On June
Attorney
1st,
General Barr,
I was worried about the District of Columbia, which is federal.
In certain parts of the country, you're very aware of those, but when protesters with guns and swastikas and Confederate flags, excuse me, Mr. Barr, this is my time and I control it. You are aware of certain kinds of protesters, but in Michigan, when protesters carry guns and Confederate flags and swastikas and call for the governor of Michigan to be beheaded and shot and lynched, somehow you're not aware of that. Somehow you didn't know about it, so you didn't send federal agents in to do to the president's supporters what you did to the president's protesters. In fact, you didn't put pepper balls on those protesters. So the point I'm trying to make here, Mr. Barr, that I think is very important for the country to understand, is that there is a real discrepancy in how you react as the Attorney General, the top cop in this country, when white men with swastikas storm a government building with guns. There is no need for the president to, quote, activate you because they're getting the president's personal agenda done. But when black people and people of color protest police brutality, systemic racism, and the president's very own lack of response to those critical issues, then you forcibly remove them with armed federal officers, pepper bombs, because they are considered terrorists by the president. You take an aggressive approach to Black Lives Matter protests, but not to right-wing extremists threatening to lynch a governor if it's for the president's benefit. Did I get it right, Mr. Barr?
I have responsibility for the federal government, and the White House is the seat of the executive
Mr. Barr, let me
branch,
just make it clear. You are supposed to
Michigan
represent
authorities
the
can
people
handle,
of the United States of America, not violate people's First Amendment rights. You are supposed to uphold democracy and secure equal justice under the law, not violently dismantle certain protesters based on the president's personal agenda.
Gentlelady's time is expired.
Okay, so it sounds at first like he's making a rebuttal. Well, it's the difference between state and federal, right? So when the courthouse or the Capitol building that the people in Michigan were storming when they had their AR-15s and everything and they were going in there, he's saying, well, that's a state building. I don't have authority over the state. We're doing federal stuff. So like in D.C., right? Although most accounts show that there really was no reason to be tear gassing those people on that street when it happened. So now, you didn't have people walking around with a bunch of guns and stuff. So what was the justification then? They're falling back on this reasoning that, well, we have to protect federal property, right? Well, you can make that justification. You can use it for anything. You can stretch it or make it fit any situation, just like they're doing in Portland. So he said in there, oh, well, the people in Michigan can handle their own situation. That's a state issue. Well, then what about in Portland? Right? What's going on in Oregon that then you have to go in and you have to step into that rather than letting Oregon figure out its own issues, right? Well, The argument then is, well, we have a courthouse there that was being graffitied, so we had to get in there. And basically the idea was we have to get in there and escalate things. So rather than just letting the peaceful protesters protest, we have to escalate things to make sure that there's some violence, so then we can justify the fact that we're in here. And you see these events happening, like she's saying, at certain events that don't look good for the president. Right? So she pretty much hits the nail on the head. If you dive deep into the details, yeah, they're going in and they're escalating things in certain situations that they then can turn around and say, well, look, this is getting out of control. We need to crack down on this, like Portland and DC. But then in Michigan, they say, you know what? This is a state issue. We don't really want to get involved. But I can tell you what, if they didn't want what was going on in Michigan to happen, like she's saying, where you're feeding the president's agenda, they would go right in there and say, well, actually, there's a federal building that we need to get in there and we protect. There's some federal property that we need to get in there and make sure, we're afraid that these protesters are going to hurt the federal property. We need to get in there and fix that. So she's hit the nail on the head. They are picking and choosing where to go, escalate the violence, and then turn around and go, well, look at Portland's totally out of control. Totally out of control. They're not taking it peacefully like people did in Michigan, where they were just walking around with all their guns. So this is the kind of thing we need to look out for when we are digesting the news. Because, Barr is smart, and there's a lot of people working with him that can come up with very smart arguments. You have to be able to get below that. Like Representative Jayapal did here, where she says, okay, yeah, look, I see what you're saying, but below that, there's a whole lot going on that actually doesn't really support your claim, right? So this whole idea of difference between state and federal doesn't hold up under examination, and she got it. So good job, Representative. Keep up the good work. Keep at them, right? They're only going to get more brazen as we approach the election. And, more and more people are talking about maybe even through the election and past the election, we are going to see more and more of this brazen attempt to take over. This is a dark period in our country's history, and we need to be paying attention. Otherwise, it is all too easy to just miss the point of these things. Right? So thanks for checking out the show. To make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can get all the new content as it becomes available. I stream Saturday nights on YouTube, and I'm streaming regularly on Twitch. So please jump over and check that out as well. And we will see you in the future.